Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier sessions, we discussed about the fundamental problems that are faced by any society or a country or an economy. Those can be called as central economic problems. And we also discussed about how different types of economic systems will try to solve these problems or answer the questions which are posed by these problems. In the series of understanding different economic systems, we started with the capitalist economy, in which different aspects have been discussed already, like what are the features of a capitalist economy or characteristics, nature, whatever the name called, various features, basic fundamental features of capitalist economy were discussed, and how the capitalist economy tries to answer the fundamental economic questions, central economic questions, is another part. And once we understand the features of a capitalist economy, we try to analyze the capitalist economy having different advantages as well as disadvantages. Both merits and demerits of capitalist economy we have discussed in the earlier classes. But as I told earlier, once you know what are the advantages of capitalist economy, they can be just considered as disadvantages of socialist economy, opposite of that. Same way, disadvantages of capitalist economy will become advantages of socialist economy. So once these two are opposite to each other, when you know one side of the coin, automatically the other side of the coin also is known, because both are similar, both are in the same coin but opposite to each other. So understanding wise, there is no new thing that we need to separately learn. Just flip the capitalist economy's features, automatically that becomes socialist economy. So the features of capitalist economy, what are all available in the capitalist economy, those are all not available in socialist economy. For example, the freedom of enterprise, freedom of choice for the consumers, consumer sovereignty, competition, these are all features of capitalism, private property. But these are all exactly the opposite in socialism, means these are all not available in socialism. So all that we need to do for the remaining part of this chapter is to just flip all the things what we already know. That's what let us do in this session today, very clearly, having the understanding of what has been defined under the capitalist system and understanding it on a different way, considering it as a new type of economic system, that is socialist economy. Of course, we have to really go through a lot of historical details when we understand the socialist economy. Absolutely, whatever is mentioned here is not true also. Why? Because the concept of socialism is not new. It was not just proposed by Marx or Engels. Yes, they have made it little popular and they made it more scientific by publishing books on the Communist Manifesto or Das Kapital, like this. However, the concepts of socialism were there earlier also. But anyway, let us not get into the details of who has introduced this economic system to the world. Rather than who did it, what is what our interest is about. So what happens in a socialist economy is what we have to just focus more in the following pages of this chapter. So what will be the feature of this? First of all, one of the features of this is the material means of production. Which are means of production? We can call them factors of production, we can call them resources, whatever the name we give. Basically, the factories, capital, mines, materials, everything. And they are not owned by individuals. There is no private property here. They are owned by the whole community, but represented by the state. State means here the government. So whenever we use the word state, we have to understand government. So it should not be confused with the word state government. central government, like that. What we practically use in real life, those are just for reference purposes, but state is a bigger concept. State means the government or the authority which has a collective power of governing some sect of people, like that. State is about some authority having a power or authority over its people. That could be anything. That can be a country, that can be a particular province of a country, a region of a country, whatever it is. So basically that is government. So we don't need to go into once again the civics part of it. We just need to focus on what is the meaning of it. The meaning of it is simply government. So simply in this case, the socialism, for understanding purposes, all resources are owned by not individuals but by government, and all members are entitled to get the benefit from the fruits of that planned production. So in the socialist economies, production happens in a planned way. That is why we can also call that as a centrally planned economy, and sometimes it is also called as command economy, because command is happening from state. State has control on everything, government has control on everything. That is why we can also call that as command economy. But who is government? Government is nothing but the representation of entire public people. That is the whole community which is represented by state, which owns all the resources collectively, not individually, not privately. That will be only owned by the government, which is a collective ownership of all the resources, we can say, as one of the features of socialist economy. And of course there will be a central planning authority here, which will do the entire planning of various activities at a centralized level. So basically in the socialist economy, market forces do not have any role in the allocation of resources. Exactly the opposite of capitalism. In capitalist economies, market forces will determine the allocation of resources. Demand and supply will determine the major allocation of resources, and every other decision, every other answer to the question is given in a capitalist economy through market forces. Simply speaking, demand and supply, and sometimes you can call that as price mechanism. But in socialist economy, who decides the answers for all those questions? We don't have different answers. There is only one answer, that is state, that is government. So government will answer all the questions: what to produce also, when to produce also, how to produce also, how much to produce also, for whom to produce also, how much to be saved or how much to be invested for future growth also. Every decision in a socialist economy is concentrated with government, but not to, that is not left to the market. That is a core difference between capitalism and socialism. So basically in the socialist economy, production and distribution, naturally, which are the two major economic activities. One point we have to keep in mind: production, distribution are must for any economy, whether it is a capitalism, whether it is socialism. We are not talking about the change in the basic structure of any economy. Basic structure of any economy, for that matter, any small village also, there will be production and distribution. That is common. What kind of production, what kind of distribution, that will change. But production, distribution definitely should happen. Even in socialist economy also, production and distribution will happen. But how they will happen? They will happen in such a way that maximizes the welfare of the community as a whole. That is how the production and distribution happens in socialist economy. Once again, we have to keep in mind, we are talking about theoretical things. Practically, all these things are not 100% possible to be implemented. That awareness should be there. We have to always think these are theories. In reality, yes, a little bit of welfare is taken care of by even social capitalistic countries. Even little bit of centralized planning and a little bit of state intervention will be there even in capitalist economies. So even in the communist type of countries or socialist type of countries, at least, which claim that they are, there also there are market forces which will have some role. We cannot say completely no role. So practically it is different, theoretically it is different. What we are looking at here is theoretical aspects. So in capitalist type of economy, market forces will take care of everything. In socialist economy, the state will take care of everything. So naturally, when we talk about the socialism, the features of socialism will be completely different from that of capitalism. One way, just opposite. Everything can be just related to the capitalism. Just flip it over, it becomes socialistic economy. In capitalism, what was there? There was private ownership of resources. Whereas in the socialist economies, it will be collective ownership. Means private property is non-existent. So that is opposite of capitalism. So socialism, one of the characteristics is collective ownership, but not private ownership. Second thing, there is a huge planning in socialist economies. So there is a central planning authority in the socialistic economies, and they will take care of all the answers to the major questions like what to produce, how much to produce, etc., etc. These are all taken by whom? By the central planning authority. In case of capitalism, it was not there. There was no planning authority exactly which will answer these questions. But in capitalism, who will answer these questions? Market will answer those questions. In socialism, who will answer those questions? The central planning authority. Of course, that authority is under the control of government, state, who have the ultimate power in hand in order to answer all these questions which are posed by any economy. And in capitalism, as we have seen earlier, there is a consumer choice. Consumer choice is more there. Consumer sovereignty is more there. Remove that. Definitely, that is what happens in socialism. So there is no much of choice for consumers. But yeah, there are some good things. Hunger may not be there. Everybody might get the basic needs satisfied. Roti, kapada, makan might be available. But beyond that, the range of choice will be limited in socialistic countries. There may not be luxury goods available. There may not be the goods which are not much useful in life. They may not be available. So the range of choice is definitely limited. Okay, if you look at like, let us say somebody has to have a shower. They need a soap, let us say. But in normal society, what we are looking at, we have soaps which have, neem flavor, nimbu flavor, chandan, haldi, aloe vera soaps are there, milk, cream soaps are there, and whatnot. Different types of soaps are there, menthol soaps are there, and there is no limit for this type of choice. Practically speaking, is there going to be really any difference in that? Practically speaking, not like subjectively. Yeah, I like this flavor, I don't like that flavor. That is a personal choice. But objectively speaking, soap is a soap. If you take a shower with a soap, ultimately the objective of cleaning your body is served. So that much choice may not be given. In socialistic societies, maybe one or two types are there. You just choose from them. All your choices, all your whims and fancies may not be satisfied in the socialistic type of economies. Again, already people are thinking, oh, it will be no, it will be very difficult. No, where it is there, Baba, it is a theory. If such type of economy is there, then the consumer choice will not be available. The range of choice will be limited. That's what we are talking about. Of course, the right to work is guaranteed. Definitely, yes. Everybody will get work. Everybody might get employment. Unemployment will be less in socialist economies. But again, the other side of it, the choice of occupation gets restricted. You have the right to work, but which work you want to do, that may be not your hands. So government asks you to do carpentry work, you have to do that. If the government asks you to construct a road, you have to do that. So whatever the government tells you to do, you might have to do that. So ultimately, what type of job you want to choose, what type of occupation you want to choose, may be completely not the choice of people. So mostly the government or the state will decide what type of work has to be done by the people also. So the consumer choice is very limited in the mythical socialistic economy. So the ownership is not private, it is collective. Planning is at a central level, that is central planning authority will be there. Consumer choice will be very, very limited. And another point, characteristic here in a socialistic economy is equal income distribution will happen. I mean, relatively not so inequalities will not be there. In the sense, distribution of incomes will be more or less equivalent. Not somebody will not be too rich and somebody will not be too poor. Everybody will be more or less on an average level. So the basic causes of inequalities are removed. That is why in socialist or communist systems we say more or less people are all equal in nature. So they have been treated equally. They get the incomes also relatively equally. Once again, people are thinking equal means exactly how can it be? Scientist also gets the same income. The construction worker also gets the same income. The accountant also gets the same income. No, sir, not like that. Exactly equal, no. But relatively equal. Too much difference also will not be there. But in capitalism, if you see, the difference is too much. For a person who is a software engineer or who is, let us say, CEO of a big company, the CEO gets the salary which is very high. In India, also a lot of high paying CEOs are there who are getting crores and crores of rupees of annual salaries. Whereas there are workers who might not even get few thousands of rupees also. So that much inequality exists in capitalistic societies, but that will be removed to some extent in, once again, mythical socialistic societies which are non-existent. But if any such society could be created, there these things will be implemented. No private property, ownership is collective, planning will happen at a central level. Though there is a problem like consumer choice is limited, still they get their job done and they get right to work also. And another good point here is they have relatively equal income distribution. So more or less inequalities can be little bit reduced in socialistic economy. And of course, opposite of capitalism, once again, capitalism works on what? Price mechanism, that is market forces. Whereas socialism doesn't work on that. So basically the price mechanism or market forces do not have much of a role to play in the socialistic societies. Why is that? Who is all completely taking control here is the central planning authority. So what is it taking? This is called, this word you have to remember, that is called as administered prices. So the socialism will not have market prices. Market prices means they will move according to the demand and supply. Demand and supply changes, prices will change in capitalism. But in socialistic societies, administered prices means those are not left to the market. Those are all set by, controlled by, monitored by the central planning authority on the basis of the required socio-economic objectives. Certain goods may be priced very high, certain goods may be priced very low, but those are not free. The people or the businessmen may not be free to set prices as they wish. The prices will be administered by the central planning authority. Of course, in India also we can check a little bit, not completely, but a little bit of these administered prices in certain areas. For example, agricultural products. You would have heard this minimum support price. So for anybody, a farmer who wants to sell some agricultural produce, when they go to the market, the buyers cannot buy that product below a minimum support price which is fixed by the government. So that is what minimum support price is, an example of administered prices. Again, it's a different story whether it is really implemented or not. Are farmers really getting minimum support price? Is minimum support price first of all fair, or is it also already low? These are all different discussions, but we're only taking it as an example for administered prices. Why is it called administered prices? Because we are not leaving it to the market. Demand supply, if it is the one which is left to, then farmers may not get basic price also. That is why the government wants to support the farmers by fixing a minimum support price. At least that much the traders have to pay, the buyers have to pay to the farmers when they buy the agricultural produce from them. That is an example of administered prices. Of course, the central planning authority in this case will be the central government guidelines on minimum support prices for different type of products. Like this, the socialist governments, perfectly socialist governments, will have administered prices for every product, not just for one or two products. Many products will have these type of administered prices. So prices of the products will not be left to the market. That is the point. They will be decided by the central planning authority in socialistic economies. And of course, once again, the opposite of capitalism. In capitalism, competition was there. In socialistic economies, there is no need of competition. Why? The state is the sole entrepreneur. There is no other person. There is no private businessman here. There is no private entrepreneur who has the control on all the resources to do the manufacturing process. Nobody is there. State is the sole entrepreneur. Means there is no competition to the state. State in the sense government or government controlled organizations. They will have ownership on the resources, factories and all. That is what happens in a socialistic economy. And we can say these are all examples, or we can say the features of many aspects in a socialistic economy. Earlier, some countries, or at least we can say, tried to be socialistic economies. There is no particularly socialist, 100% socialist economies. No countries, nothing is possible. 100% capitalistic also not possible. 100% socialistic is also not possible. But yes, they say that North Korea right now is one of the examples which is existing, and China, at least they claim that. Cuba, to some extent, they claim that. So some of these countries are, whether 100% or not, generally considered to be inclined towards more socialistic principles. USSR is Russia. Now it is not there. That has already been divided into many small countries. Earlier it was there. When that was there, it was a proper socialist economy, or at least namesake it is a socialist economy. But now Russia is not currently a socialistic economy. But North Korea, China, Cuba still claim to be socialistic economies. Once again, we cannot completely go with their claims. Theory is different, practical things are always very, very different. So, capitalistic principles, flip them other side, they become socialistic principles. There was private property, here it is collective ownership. There was market which takes the decisions of what to produce, how to produce, and all. Here, central planning authority takes those decisions. There was consumer sovereignty and choice. Here, there is no consumer sovereignty and choice. There, inequalities were more. Here, inequalities are less, which means more or less the equitable distribution of income happens in socialism. There was a huge role of price mechanism, that is called market forces, demand supply, simply speaking, in capitalism. In socialism, that is a very minimum role where this price mechanism is playing in the actual, you can say, the setup of the prices or build up of the prices. Basically, in socialism, more than demand and supply, the administered prices will be determined by the central planning authority. That is the difference. There was competition. Here, absence of competition is there. So everywhere there is a opposite things from socialism to capitalism. In capitalism, there will be many firms which are competing with each other. In socialistic societies, there is no competition much. Why? Because mostly all the businesses, all the production happens through government only. Since the state is the sole entrepreneur, no competition exists in socialistic economies. Once we understand the features of socialism, we can also understand the merits and demerits. Once again, demerits of capitalism become merits of socialism, and vice versa. Merits of capitalism become demerits of socialism. We don't need to again go through them in detail. We just can understand from some words here. So what was the demerit of capitalism? There was inequalities. Now it becomes a merit of socialism because there is equitable distribution of wealth and income happens in socialism. So inequalities will be less in socialism. That is the point here. And one more point is a balanced economic development is possible in case of socialism. Why is that? Because there is a central planning authority. In capitalism, there is no central planning authority. Then production happens haphazardly, distribution happens haphazardly according to whatever the feelers that manufacturers get from the market. Sometimes they may go completely wrong. But in case of socialism, since there is a central planning authority, it will try to coordinate all the resources in the best possible manner so that the economic development can be happening in a rapid way also and in a balanced way also. That is another advantage of socialist system, we can say. And as we know already, the socialist economy is a planned economy. Naturally, a simple question, if anybody asks, sir, what do you like? Anybody will answer this question like this. Let us say if somebody asks, what is better, planned thing or unplanned thing? Definitely everybody will say planned thing only. So capitalism is an unplanned thing. Planning happens at a personal level. Socialism is a planned economy. So what happens in socialism? Naturally, better utilization of resources can happen, and that also can ensure the maximum production. Wastes can be avoided, and we have seen this as a limitation of capitalism also. A lot of wastage happens in capitalism. Unnecessary wastages like advertisement, sales promotion, these things can be avoided. What is the use? What is the value they are adding to the product? There are like 50 different types of soaps, let us say. All of them are advertising, spending hundreds of crores of rupees on television and other places. What did you get because of that? Did you get any better soap from that? As a consumer, is consumer getting benefited from that advertisement? Nothing. He's just getting fooled from that advertisement. So all that wastages can be avoided in socialistic economies. So that is possible here. That is a good point, positive point of socialistic economies, since it is a planned economy. And not only that, and one of the other disadvantages of capitalism was unemployment will be more there. Here, unemployment will be less. Business fluctuations will be more there. Here, there will be less. There will not be stability there. Now there will be stability here in socialism. Once again, why is all possible? Because everything is planned. If you go unplanned, naturally, you might end up producing more completely or less. And ultimately, that causes a lot of business cycles and stability is something which capitalism cannot guarantee. Always there will be fluctuations in capitalism, whereas in socialistic economies, stability can be at least maintained. That is another advantage. Everything just opposite of capitalism only. In capitalism, there was inequalities. In socialism, there is equitable distribution. There was no central planning authority, so the development could be imbalanced there. Here, because there is a central planning authority, there can be a balanced and rapid development. In capitalism, a lot of wastages happen. In socialism, those wastages can be avoided. Same way, in a capitalistic economy, unemployment, business cycles are common. Here in socialism, unemployment can be eliminated, fluctuations can be reduced, stability can be brought in, like that. And another point is, in case of capitalism, what was the driving force, as we discussed earlier, is profit motive. Profit motive is always what? Selfishness. Everybody wants to have individual benefit only. But in capitalism, that is another disadvantage also, because psychologically everybody becomes selfish. There is no cooperative mentality in the people. As a society, for human beings, that is not a good thing. But in socialistic economies, what happens? There is a cooperative mentality because selfishness is getting reduced. So, because of cooperative mentality, that avoids the class war, and also it increases equality and ensures the welfare of the society. If everybody is selfish, if everybody wants to get benefit to themselves, then that is not a good sign for human civilization. Progressively, together, if all the people put together can work towards a common goal, then that gives a cooperative mentality, and that definitely ensures equality and welfare also in the society. So psychologically speaking, once again, theoretically, capitalism is too much of selfishness promoting mechanism, whereas in case of socialism, it promotes not selfishness but a cooperative mentality. Again, theoretically, this is good. This is what definitely the advantage of socialism, we can say. But we know very well, practically that is difficult because human beings are also naturally selfish. So that is why this socialism could not sustain in these countries where it tried also for a long period, that could not sustain. They could do that for some period, some years they could do that. Maybe by force they did that. But after some time, people generally are selfish. If you ask them not to be selfish, if you ask them to work together for a common goal without having any selfish expectation for self, then that is something like too much to ask from a common person. That is what the psychology of the people. It will not change in 10, 20 years. If such a system can be sustained for a few centuries, let us say 2, 3 centuries, if this system can be sustained, then by that time, 5, 6, 7 generations, once they finish, then by that time people might lose selfishness. But basically, we cannot lose that selfishness just like that, just because our government has become from capitalism to socialism. That is why that cannot sustain for longer time. That is the reason why even China also namesake capitalist, namesake communist, namesake socialist. But actually, what is happening there is more or less capitalism only in a different way. Not exactly 100% capitalism, but at the same time, not exactly 100% socialism also. Little bit tilted towards socialism, but ultimately they are also using all the capitalistic principles. They cannot really ensure all these great points in implementation. Of course, those challenges will be there. And as we already discussed, there is a right to work here in the socialistic societies, and there is a minimum standard of living that can be guaranteed. So people may not have luxuries, may not have a lot of great things, but at least minimum standard of living is guaranteed in socialism. That is a good thing. Again, a positive point we can say in relation to socialism. And once again, exploitation is one thing which is a very bad point in the capitalism we discussed earlier, where the laborers as well as consumers are generally exploited in capitalistic societies. In socialistic economies, that exploitation can be avoided. Opposite of that, what we already know, exploitation of laborers and consumers is a common phenomena for capitalistic economies. Now that can be avoided. And since the social security is provided in the socialism, that generally makes the citizens feel secure in socialistic societies. In capitalism, always the citizens are insecure. We don't know what happens tomorrow. Always the insecurity will be more in capitalistic societies. Whether you will have a job or not, you don't know. Whether for the education what we have, Will you get an employment or not? You don't know. If you get an employment also, will it be there or not? You don't know. How much money you can make, what you can actually become in life. Nobody knows anything. Everything is uncertain and insecure. That is the nature of capitalistic society. But in socialistic societies, people feel secure because they know that government is going to take care of them comprehensively. The government provides the social security to everybody. So the old people, they will get pensions. The unemployed people might get their own unemployment allowances. Like this, everybody in the society, the weak, the poor, the downtrodden, the marginalized sections of the society will be taken care of by the state in the socialistic system. That is why people might not feel very insecure in socialistic societies. That is a good point in relation to socialism. So these are all we can call them as merits of socialism. So we have some of the basic characteristics of socialism, and same characteristics only will result in some of the merits of socialism. But once you look at the merits, naturally you have to also look at demerits of socialism also. We cannot ignore the other things, but actually once again the same. Whatever the merits of capitalism are, those become demerits of socialism. In socialism, some of the aspects which actually implementation issues are there. Once again, these are all coming from the real experience of what happened in the socialistic societies, not from the theory. Demerits are not purely coming from the theory. Theoretically speaking, socialism definitely looks like on the face of it looks like what a fantastic system. Everybody is happy. Everybody has right to work. Everybody has minimum standard of living. Nobody is getting exploited. Everybody has social security, and there is equality ensured. Unemployment is minimized. Fluctuations are not there. Stability is there, and wastes are all avoided. All looks fantastic. Oh, what a system, what a fantastic system. Yes, it looks like definitely that. But when it comes to reality, there are a lot of problems. So socialism by theory may not have a lot of limitations, but when it comes to reality, bureaucracy might have more predominance, and that will result in inefficiencies, and that will result in corruption, red tapeism, and favoritism, etc. All of these things are quite possible and happened also whenever little bit more socialistic principles have been tried to be followed, even in USSR, even for that matter in India, in the earlier years. These things have really rotten heavily in those places where this was implemented. So once again, though theoretically it looks all good, practically it gives rise to these negative points like corruption, red tapeism, inefficiency of officers. Bureaucracy basically is about government officers. Why this is all happening? Because basically the power is with them. Because in socialism, the ultimate power lies with state. And state is who? State means not only just one person, president, prime minister, not just the state. That will work through various government officers. So since they have a lot of power, they will try to misuse that power because they are also human beings. And human beings always have crooked thoughts. So they may have all these problems. They may have show all these negative things. So they will not do the work properly. Red tapeism means not getting the work done quickly. I can observe that even in some of the banks also, like public sector banks. Not now. Nowadays they are reasonably working. Okay. Earlier, if you go to a bank and ask for something, they will say go to the next counter. You go there, they say go to next counter. They will say go to next counter. Your work will never be done. So the consumer will never get the work done. The public, the citizen will never get the work done. Red tapeism. If you want to really see them, you go to any government office, you can see all of that. Bureaucracy will show all the power. They don't even behave as if they are our servants. They behave as if like we are their servants. In reality is that they are public servants. If we go to any government office, be it a collector, he is my servant. He should be our servant. He should respect me. But does it happen in reality? Reality is different. Opposite happens. They will behave as if they are the bosses and public are their servants. So that is the nature of bureaucracy. They will do the domination. The dominance of bureaucracy will be more, and the inefficiency will be generally more. That is a practical problem. Corruption, red tapeism, favoritism. These are all problems of implementation of socialistic principles, we can say in general. And as we know already, the freedom of individuals is restricted because everything is controlled by state. But generally, the human beings once again crave for this freedom. Maybe you will be given biryani also. Doesn't matter. You will be given whatever the food you want, whatever the food is best. But if you don't like that food, you will not take that. So the freedom of choice is always something that human beings really would like to have, which the socialistic economy fails to provide because it restricts the freedom of individuals. There is no much choice for them what to wear, what to eat, what to where to work, what are the possibilities of buying the products and services. All these things are there. I'm not telling that they're all living in jungle and all. No, but the choice is very limited. So naturally, the freedom of individuals is restricted. That is a problem. And very basic right like right to private property is taken away by the socialism. Yes, whether it is a basic right or not is a debatable issue, but definitely the right of private property, yes, that is taken away by the socialism. That is a major thing that socialism does, which no other system earlier has done. And socialist system tries to take away the private property, means nobody has any private property. Every property is a common property. Of course, we're talking about property, not anything else. We're talking about basically land actually, and other resources, natural resources, we can say. That does not mean if I have a toothbrush, that is also a public property. Anybody can take and use my toothbrush. Not in that sense, but in general, there is nothing which is called as a private property that is taken away from socialism. That is a negative point, definitely, in socialistic societies, socialistic systems, right? And because there is no private property, because there is no profit motive, as we discussed earlier, there is no incentive to hard work. Not there, because people are selfish. Why should they work hard? Even if they work super hard, also, even if they work average, also, even if they work below average, also, ultimately they get the result, they get the food, they are safe, government will take care of them. So then the incentive to hard work will reduce in socialistic societies. That is a negative thing. So people slowly, if not quickly, slowly become lazy, and that increases the inefficiencies in the system as a whole. That is quite natural. And another problem with the socialistic system is the administered prices. Administered prices are not fixed by the market. So they are fixed by the government. That means the central planning authority. So what happens in this? Proper caste calculation might not happen, because of which there may not be an efficient functioning of the economic system. So that becomes impossible. That is a problem with administered prices, which happen in the socialistic economies. So, in socialistic economies, administered prices will lead to less efficient functioning of economic system, we can say. That is another disadvantage or a demerit of socialism. Of course, in socialism, state monopolies are created. There is no competition, means all organizations are owned by state, government, companies, government organizations. So they are monopolies. See, when there are monopolies, they become sometimes uncontrollable. They are so big, that's so dangerous, that even they become more dangerous than the private monopolies under capitalism. Of course, capitalism also might ultimately result in monopolies, but in socialism, the state monopolies are created. They might become bigger and bigger, and there may not be any control on them. Sometimes they may become uncontrollable also. This is another problem, possible issue under socialistic economies. Already, as we know, that consumers do not have freedom of choice. That's a problem which is already known to us. And personal efficiency and productivity has no much incentive in the socialistic system, because everybody is treated equal. Once again, the one who does the fantastic work also is equal. The one who does not do the fantastic work, who does an average work also, is getting the more or less similar type of importance. So naturally, if people are all very positive in nature, if people are all really thinking well, they should follow the person who is already doing a good work. I should also become like him. Like that motivation will not be there. Why? Because even the best performing person also is getting the same money or same result or same importance. Even the least performing person also getting the same importance. So the least performing person has no issue. So he will not improve. There is no force on him or pressure on him. Best performing person will get demotivated. So that is a problem. So that will act like a disincentive to the work. The people who are really talented might not be interested in doing or using their talent. That is a problem. That is why all these things completely make it. It is not at all practicable. Theory is fantastic. Anybody can say, oh, what a fantastic theory. Everybody is equal. Profit motive is not there. Selfishness is not there. Ideal, yes. It's like a utopia that can be dreamt of. But reality is that so many issues will be there in implementing these type of systems like socialistic systems. Clear? These are the characteristics and merits and demerits of socialist economy. Of course, most of them are just opposite of what we already discussed in the capitalistic systems. Same thing will happen. And now once we have the socialistic systems and the capitalistic system, if at all there is any other thing to discuss about a mixed economy, there is nothing else. Why? Because there will be coexistence of public and private sector. There will be all the three. In capitalism, private sector will only be there. In socialism, public sector will only be there. In mixed economies, all the three will be there. That's all. That's what is mixed economy. So nothing new. So will it have a little special any kind of characteristics? No, there is no special characteristics. It will have the same characteristics of capitalism also and socialism also. Will there be economic freedom? Yes. But at the same time, on the other side, there will be private property also. Yes. There will be price mechanism also. Yes. So all the things which are already part of advantages of capitalism will come to mixed economy. All the advantages of socialism also will come to mixed economy. Of course, don't think only advantages will come. When advantages are coming, automatically disadvantages also will come. Also will come. So it is a, I would say, a kind of attempt we can say, to take all the positive points from both capitalism and socialism. That's what we call as mixed economy. There is every economy is mixed economy in practice. They try to get or draw a golden path between the capitalism and socialism. On other extreme, capitalism has a lot of positives and negatives. In this extreme, socialism has a lot of positives and negatives. So trying to get both positives and trying to mitigate both negatives is what mixed economies will attempt. Whether they are able to achieve it or not is again depends upon the government's will and also efficiency. That is another you can say characteristic of any country. Any country definitely is governed by the politically elected people in general. If not elected also, that is a known system which governs all the people. And if they are efficient, if they have proper vision, if they have proper understanding of how the economy is working, definitely economies will do good. If not, economies will go for toss. That we can see in many cases throughout the world. India is not an exception. When we had situations which were out of control, even in those cases when good economists were there at the top of the affairs, we were able to come back. But again, it is not that key. Sometimes, always we can say we are doing fantastic, or always we can say we are doing worst. Both are not correct. There were times where India did good, well, fantastic. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes we fell down. Again, we went up. All these things do happen. But as a mixed economy, definitely, India is also a mixed economy. There is excessive controls by the state. Definitely, yes. That has to be a little bit of reduced, and now it is being reduced also. And poor implementation of planning also is there. High rates of taxation, lack of efficiency, corruption, all these things will be there. But mainly the point in the mixed economy is what? The point in the mixed economy is that maintaining the proper balance between private and public sectors. Both will be coexisting here. It is not a pure private sector, not a pure public sector. It will be both. So how to maintain the balance is the big challenge. Once again, you and I are not going to do that. That is the job of government. So the government should be having a strong initiatives so that there will be a proper balance that is maintained. However, once again, it will have all the advantages of capitalism also, disadvantages also. Same way, advantages of socialism also, disadvantages also. Which one will come out, which one will be there, all of them will be just like that visible in front of us. So all advantages cannot be, only advantages cannot be there, only disadvantages cannot be there. Both will be mixed in the mixed economy. But once again, on a whole, whether it is doing well or not, that completely depends upon the government which is ruling the country, the will of the government, the system which is governing the country. If it is doing well, definitely any country will prosper. That is how the mixed economies work. So there is nothing special about mixed economies, nothing new feature, not a single feature of mixed economy. It is basically having both the characteristics of capitalist economies and socialist economies. So this is the discussion in relation to three types of economic systems where the answers to the questions of what to produce and how to produce and for whom to produce, and how much provisions to be made for future further growth. All these things are answered in different ways by different economies. Capitalism answers in one way, mostly the answer will be left to the market. Socialism answers in another way, mostly the answer will lie with the government whatever it decides, that will be the answer. In mixed economy it will be partly market, partly government, so both will be there. Like, we have certain things where there are administered prices in India, for example agricultural produce. Certain things where there is no agriculture, there is no administered prices, like for example soaps, shampoos and all. Government is not going to put any price tag on that, it is left to the market. So it's a mixed approach. Most of the countries in the world are mixed economies. Only what changes is where is the economy little bit tilted. Is it tilted little bit towards the capitalistic principles or more towards socialistic principles? That only we have to see. Mostly the capitalist economies in the world, like the Western countries like America and most of the European countries, West Europe and Australia, New Zealand, these are all generally the Canada, Australian, and all these countries are generally the capitalistic economies, which are more popular in nature. Japan, for that matter, is a capitalistic economy, though it is in Asia. Like South Korea is a capitalistic economy. Most of these countries, Singapore, these are all capitalistic, more capitalistic economies. And most of the other countries are mixed economies, or to some extent, little bit more socialistic economies, are like China, Cuba, North Korea. We can still take them as examples. But most of the other countries are almost mixed economies. India is also a mixed economy. There is a little bit of inclination towards socialism earlier, prior to 1991 in India. Now, after 1991, the tilt has been changed to little bit of more capitalism. This keeps on changing. It is something that the dynamics of the society will take it in a different direction. So that is all, once again, a political discussion. We don't need to get into that. From the economics point of view, these are the possible solutions to the questions which are faced fundamentally by any society. How to answer that? That will be decided by the society. If they choose one type of system, the answers will be different. If they choose another type of system, the answer will be different. So we are not here to decide which is better, which is not better. We are only here to understand what is what are the characteristics of each type of system, what are the advantages and disadvantages of each type of system. We have understood in detail in this particular unit 2 of chapter 1. With that, we can conclude unit 2 of chapter 1, and in the next session directly we will go to MCQs. But before we start discussion of the MCQs, everybody should be thorough with all the things that have been already discussed. So a proper reading of all the things in the first chapter, entire chapter, not only unit 2. So both unit 1 and unit 2 of chapter 1 should be read before we do the MCQs, which will be done in the next session. Till that time, read well once again all the things, revise them, then we will discuss the questions in the next session. Till then, bye bye, take care, thank you very much.